Yo, what's happening, legends? Thank you so much for joining me. I see we got Maritza, Freewill, Chesm in the house. Expecting a little small turnaround, of course, this being our first show on the new channel and new community, right? New brand, so to speak. Charts are dumb. I'm very excited to be here, guys. You know, I've taken quite a big break off the streaming thing. For those of you guys who were part of the initial community, obviously, Crypto Legends was a little private Telegram group that we had, completely free, and we did streams there. You know, close to 2 years already. And, you know, since then, now we've decided to build our own brand and build our own system on YouTube, which will eventually turn into its own community group, products behind it and stuff like that over the next couple of while. But this is the first time streaming on YouTube, a little bit different than our traditional Zoom experience with a live chat, but I think I've got the delay pretty solid right now. What's up, Mikai? What's up, Alberts? Guys, I appreciate you guys being here. Obviously, the OG legends. You know, I'm glad you guys were able to make it. I think that, you know, just a quick introduction to what this channel is. Expect a little bit of glitches, right? The audio might cut or whatever this is. As I said, the first time using the software, OBS, you know, being on YouTube and all of that. So, you know, I'm expecting it not to be smooth sailing, but hopefully we get through it. What's up, Antabali? Thank you so much for joining. Charts are dumb, not the best domain, but, you know, I think it's more of a message than a brand, so to speak. And I think what I love about it is it's just representative of what this content's going to be about. The idea for this community and that kind of rebranding, so to speak. And that's just around how, you know, we know the odds are against us. You know, we know that statistically speaking, it's pretty dumb to trade on the lower time frame. I haven't made, relatively speaking, not nearly as much money on trading 5 minutes as I have on the higher time frames and just getting a better grasp on the market. Obviously, being crypto, we understand the volatility and the risk involved with that. But that's what the show is about, right? We're going to take a look at markets every single market open, not every single day, probably about 3 to 4 times a week. I have a few projects I'm cooking up on the side as well, so this is not my main thing, but I wanted to keep it going. For those of you guys who have been around for a long enough period of time, you'll know that this is just really like a passion project, right? You know, being part of a community, building something and teaching people how to trade has always been something that I've loved doing. I've never ever monetized it, and this time will be a little bit different, right? Just to kind of be fully transparent around the future of this channel. We are eventually going to bring on some sponsors to fund, you know, the projects that we do, the community incentives, and obviously my extremely expensive lifestyle. Yeah, that will be the thing. But the same morals that came from, not the same morals, but the same idea that came from the initial community group is nothing I ever do, nothing I ever promote will ever be paid to the community, right? You guys will never ever pay for a cent for any private group that I have, you know, community group, any product that I eventually release. Everything will always remain free. This is the first stream, just that introduction, and just fully disclosing that, right? You know, I'm not here to make money off you. I will happily take money from another company to promote them if it's an exchange that we can all trade on together, whatever the case may be. But directly taking money from the community will never be something that happens here on Charts Are Dumb. And we need a new name for the community members. I was thinking dummies, but maybe that's a little bit insulting, but I feel like it's fitting, right? Because knowing what we're getting into, knowing what we're doing, you know, I love that idea of dummies, right? The whole branding's kind of like a little ripoff of Charts for Dummies anyway. But yeah, guys, I'm going to go through today's stuff. I'm just going to have some fun with you guys, go through some of the market things, what I'm looking at. Obviously, a little catch up is due. I've built a custom platform for these streams. As you guys can see, our little Charts Are Dumb terminal. It's not public. It's not going to be public. But it basically allows me to work with the price action principles that I generally use in trading, and it's visualization for all those factors, right? So if I'm a swing trader and I look at liquidity sweeps and swings, then I'll start to play this one out for you guys so you can see visually what I'm talking about instead of me drawing lines every single time to give you that perfect example. Some of the other stuff like fair value gaps, which is a big thing that I trade, as you guys know, and looking for those liquidity gaps and inefficiencies in the market. That's another one. So I built out the indicators so you guys can read it out there. And then just a whole bunch of other things like volume profiles and experimenting with new indicators, which I'm very, very excited to do as well with you legends. What's up, Cryptog? What's up, Wayne J? Yeah, the Telegram names are a lot more different than the YouTube names, so just forgive me if I don't remember every single one. What's up, Vitor Diaz? Yeah, guys, let's not waste too much time today. Let's get straight into it. Let's get the bearings going, and yeah, let's see what's happening. Just straight up overarching idea on the market, right? It hasn't changed at all in the last couple of months, right? Bitcoin doesn't look great. It hasn't looked great for, since November when we initially started going short. Nothing has changed, right? The market's pretty much just playing out as any bear market does. There's a lot of hopium. There's a lot of fallacy in the market. A lot of people suggesting that things are different or there's this factor or this factor. It's really not the case, right? Bitcoin is really following this textbook bear market structure where we kind of flow from 4-year cycle top down for 1 year going into October, November of this year, right? I think until that narrative is proven false, then it's extremely unlikely that I flip bullish, right? We just follow these principles. If you didn't follow the 4-year cycle, that's okay. It happens to the best of us. It happens actually to everyone in their first cycle or two. But in generally speaking, what you want to do is you want to take that factor and identify it and go, okay, cool. This is the overarching narrative and it has been for me, right? Until this is broken, I'm not going to start to go around these narratives that this time is different, right? Because that's how you inevitably end up losing money in the market. So following that, I don't think we're anywhere close. I haven't seen any invalidation for that. The market structure is still extremely, extremely bearish. And looking at Bitcoin from a higher time frame, as you guys can see, it's just consolidation drop. And in this current process here, I think maybe we have a little bit of lower time frame demand, right? We're sitting on a massive, massive macro time frame order block, so to speak, right? This massive consolidation that we had in 2024. I think this was just post the ETF. That whole thing, or going into the ETF, sorry, then we had the initial sell-off around this period here when we did get approval on that, started driving up the price again. That whole ETF support band there is where Bitcoin's been trading at. It's where it's finding support now. And that's why we're seeing a little bit more slowdown in the market, right? It is the big support level. It is the region that pretty much the vast majority of the market thought the bear market would bottom, right? You look historically, it's actually extremely, extremely false, right? It's actually never, ever happened. But there's always been this mindset that a bear market bottom is around or at the top of the previous market. And obviously with that consolidation, there's just a lot holding Bitcoin up here. We have narratives and all this, all this garbage, so to speak, that's creating a little bit of a slowdown here in Bitcoin. I think that when we look at it from a demand perspective, when we look at it from a volume or a buying pressure perspective, there's not too much changing. Right, Bitcoin still looks extremely, extremely heavy. We're seeing a little bit of relief followed by, an elevator down, right? So that whole narrative is we take the stairs up and we take the elevator down. We take the stairs up and we take the elevator down. That price action indicates how bearish Bitcoin is on a higher time frame. Of course, we have these more overarching bearish narratives around what's happening with the STRC, DPEG, MicroStrategy in general. They had their first selling a couple of weeks ago. We obviously didn't cover that because we weren't streaming, but there's all these narratives behind it. I want to highlight as well that, charts are dumb is really purely about charts. I'm not going to dive into too much news on a daily basis unless there's something very big that's affected the charts or, fits well into an excuse for why I lost the trade. Then we'll talk about it. But for the most part, I just want to kind of keep it raw charts, raw trading. We'll do some live trading on the 1 minute time frame. We'll do some challenges, 5 minute time frame, whatever. We'll really more have fun with this channel than really make it anything that I need to prepare for, right? So maybe it's a more lazy approach, but I really don't want to prepare for shows, right? I don't want to come here with something scripted for you guys, trying to get a clip out or trying to get like some emotional phrase. I really just want to freestyle, jump on board, see what's happening. If there's nothing happening, we cut it short, we end the stream, we come back tomorrow. And if there's something happening and there's something to discuss, we live trade, right? I think this is the direction I want to go with the channel. I don't want to prepare any notes, any topics, anything of that nature. I want to understand the charts and bring it to you guys live as it is, right? And I think that's the most realistic way to look at it, because generally speaking, you don't have time yourself to prepare for how you're going to trade the day or what trade you're going to take, right? Things are kind of freestyle in that nature, right? You have an over idea about how the market's going to be, but generally speaking, I want to be on the same wavelength as you guys. Wayne J said, is the crypto terminal dead now? I don't know what's happening with the crypto terminal, guys. I do not work for the company anymore, so that property is completely up to them to do with what they will. I do know that there was some announcement or someone, one of the hosts has taken over the technology and is going to build it into something awesome for the community, which is awesome, right? At least it's not going to waste. But I'm sure they'll turn it around and build something awesome with it. It was a very exciting project, but it is what it is. We have a lot of time, right? We have a long time horizon, right? I look at the market. Trading is always going to be around. Projects always going to be around. We're going to find the next awesome thing to build, and we're going to have fun with that as well. So don't stress too much. What's up, Alta Gundebenbrot? Says, welcome back, Josh. So good to hear you again when you're face again. Yeah, today's just a little impromptu stream, getting used to the YouTube side of things. But yeah, we'll put on the face eventually, guys. Jeez. Yeah, like I'm already nervous launching my own brand. Now I got to put my camera on as well. No, I will. Probably next week when we do our next show, I'll probably do another show tomorrow just so we can get the blood flowing in the group. But yeah, we'll start turning on cameras very, very soon. But yeah, guys, overall Bitcoin, what we're seeing here, lower time frame looks okay, and we'll discuss that on a different chart in just a second. Lower time frame, we're looking okay, right? There's a lot of support where we're currently sitting. We're forming a little bit of a double bottom formation. We have a lot of liquidity gaps towards the upside, fair value gaps, which I think is going to create a demand. It's going to leave that little gap of liquidity in the order books. And I think there's a good chance that we do fill this region up against here, going into like $70,000 zone. We'll kind of play that one a little bit more by ear. Overall, obviously, guys, if you have been following for a while, you know I am short Bitcoin, and I will hold that short position till a very, very low undisclosed number. But in the interim, we do have some opportunities in this zone here. We've obviously broken down below the support level. We've already had the initial bearish retest. We're not seeing a lot of buy volume. But from a liquidity standpoint, there is a massive gap there, or a massive inefficiency in the market that we could see filled out. And I'll show you guys how that trade looks in a little bit when we go onto the lower time frame platform. And I'll show you guys, if you are looking to build something up there, what that trade would look like, or you know how you'd handle that. Cool. Just going through the rest of the market, Ethereum obviously doesn't look great. Ethereum obviously one of the massively weak performers lately, right? Just close to zero demand coming into for Ethereum. It is at a pretty heavy support zone here. But inevitably when Bitcoin breaks down, Ethereum will follow suit, and I think we'll probably go back into that $1,000 region for Ethereum right here after such a massive capitulation, creating a new low, sweeping the previous zone, still coming back into such a critical level of support where previously we had seen quite strong demand in Ethereum, especially at recent years. I'm not really seeing anything of that nature there. The Ethereum ETF narratives kind of flatline. Ethereum in general, there's just really not much there, and it's coming off a pretty poor performing cycle in general, right? I don't think Ethereum, at least for enough period of time, broke all-time highs this cycle. It's not great, right? Ethereum's, if you're looking at these things as this emerging technology that's going and the hype cycles around it, we have to kind of look at crypto as not the hot girl at the party anymore, right? It's AI. AI has been driving everything. That's where all the liquidity has been placed. And that's indicative of when we look at the price action, right? So all these narratives that we tell ourselves when we go and say, okay, well, Ethereum still has a massive bullish future. It could, right? There's a good chance that a lot of these tokens do recover. But right now, that's not where the money's flowing, right? Ethereum is not the exciting project right now. And as a result, I think a lot of investors and a lot of money is going to continue to flow out of the asset until we do have a crypto bubble-like event, which is what I think we're currently experiencing or about to experience in the markets. Should Bitcoin start to lose that 50K zone, going back down towards those lower 30K zones, which is where I think Bitcoin will inevitably, fall down to, and a lot of these dominoes will fall down alongside it. Whatever happens with MicroStrategy on that side, the STRC, there's a whole collapse waiting to happen on that front. Obviously, they own a shit ton of Bitcoin. There's impossible or extremely low likelihood that that's a massive cascading event where, you know, they have to sell everything. But yeah, even just looking at this little ticker going down the bottom here, I saw MicroStrategy's down another 10% today, which is quite crazy, just considering that performance in general. But yeah, big support level here for Ethereum. I'm obviously not touching anything about it. I do think that we'll probably end up losing this level if we don't find enough buying pressure at these zones. Lower time frame for sure can start to push up towards that $1,900, which is another setup that we'll take a look at in just a little bit. One thing I wanted to say, this kind of community or this content will eventually scale into other assets that I want to trade a bit more. Like I do want to go back into TradFi, which I haven't done in a very long time, kind of getting into those narratives again, trading the Take-Two launch, trading Nvidia, trading SpaceX, whatever the case may be. I do want to kind of bring that in as well, which is why we went with a very narrative neutral charts are down, right? Not crypto's down or anything of that, right? I want to kind of expand towards these other markets there. Nothing really to talk about on this front, right? Not something I'm keeping up with. Obviously, S&P 500 looks strong. It always has. I think as things are calming down with the Iranian war and whatever's happening on that front, S&P 500 continues to push. It's not as if the war really had too much of an effect on any asset, right? Bitcoin as well rallied, since that war started, and things are gone a little bit quiet on that front. It's just, yeah, S&P 500 looks strong. It looks good. I think it could continue to rally for a little bit. Inevitably, we will see a pretty heavy correction on traditional finance, as we have already seen on gold and silver. Eventually, this market does correct. The AI bubble is massive. It's probably an historic event that is upcoming. I've looked at this from all angles, and I think obviously what that does to crypto, it's not a rotation into crypto, right? We've seen narratives like this also start to pop up where people say, oh, what's going to happen is the AI bubble is going to pop and the stock market's going to drop, and then they're going to rotate into crypto. It's really not how things work, right? That's not at all how things work. That's not what's going to happen in this event either. I think that if we do inevitably see this massive correction upcoming for the S&P 500 in traditional finance, when this AI bubble, so to speak, pops, all risk assets will follow suit. Right, the US economy in general is struggling, right? The average household. I think that when these investments start to go down, there's no rotation and going, oh, fuck, well, Nvidia dumped, I might as well go buy a shitcoin, or I might as well go buy Bitcoin, right? It's going to be a cascade, and they sell the other asset to protect the losses of the bigger investments or to cover up some of those losses. So yeah, I think that the S&P 500, MicroStrategy, all these factors are still pretty heavy weighing, factors on Bitcoin's potential recovery, right? And I think that they inevitably lead towards those further downside targets that we're looking for into 30K or whatever the case may be. Cool. Solana as well, guys. I just want to do a quick update on Solana. This is a position I shorted from about $95, $94. I'm holding on to this position. I think Solana is about to shit the bed. And what we'll be looking at for Solana on a slightly higher time frame, it's taking a little bit longer than I anticipated, but we're very likely to see this massive macro liquidity gap fall towards the downside, right? Historically speaking, Solana has not traded well within these zones. Big liquidity squeeze going through these areas right there. And if we look at that, basically what that means is it's a lack of levels, right? It's a lack of liquidity. It's a lack of support or resistance within those two zones. And I do think that within the next couple of weeks, couple of months, we will see Solana start to fall down sub $40 going to those low regions, which, I'm long-term still pretty bullish on Solana, so I'm kind of patiently waiting for that position to take hold. I think $67 is still too expensive. And Solana also another heavy underperformer considering the cycle that we've had, around meme tokens, around those assets. Solana also a very weak performer this cycle, right? Market cap-wise, not too bad, obviously based on the circulating supply increasing. But in general speaking, I think that it's not unrealistic to see Solana at like $20, $30 again before the end of the year, right? So I'll be preparing for that as well. Cool. Just to kind of address this platform for anyone who did join a little bit later, I don't expect these type of shows are going to have much rewatching or post viewers, but the general idea on this is basically where we're going to do our lower time frame trading, where we're going to look for those opportunities in the market. What I'm looking at on Bitcoin right now, You know, as you guys can see on the top left here, we do have a balance, right? That's the account balance. That's where we're starting at. We're going to look to slowly grind that up. I did $100 because I think the average person could trade with $100, right? That's a bold claim, but I'm doing it that way, and we're treating it like $100 is what I have. I do not recommend you follow any trades. I know you're probably going to follow trades. We are going to trade lower time frame. We are going to lose a lot of money. With any luck, we'll win a lot more than we lose. And even if we don't, we'll follow some pretty strong risk management strategies to make sure that even if we win 30% of our trades, we can still turn around some profit in this. And then we'll slowly grind it up. And I think the channel will serve as that social proof for what charts are done. And you'll just kind of watch it day by day. We're not going to be doing 40x leverage. I'm not going to turn $100 into $10,000 in a week, right? That's not what we're looking for. That's not the strategy today. It's really going to be what trading is about, right? I want to just put this disclaimer here. Statistically speaking, guys, you're not likely to find any major success in trading on a lower time frame basis, right? Trading on a 1 minute chart, trading on a 5 minute chart is statistically as close to impossible as any skill there is, right? I've never personally met anyone that has found success on this on a higher time frame. I think specifically in crypto as well, or especially in crypto, it's a lot harder thing to do based on the liquidity, based on the manipulation in the market, the volatility. You know, there's a lot of squeezing, a lot of bullshit that happens that really will affect your success as a trader. I can trade lower time frame, guys. I know how to do it. Although I have to say before I do anything that this is not even close to, for a relative percentage, to where I've made my income or, you know, found success in trading, right? This is like 5%, no, not even 5%, maybe 3% of all the success I found in trading has been on an extremely low time frame, right? Probably even less than 3% if we're completely honest. So I want you guys to know that I am trading this. This is not how you make money or find a lot of success in crypto. Okay, this is just a fun way to trade, and hopefully you learn a little bit more about like the pure price action principles in trading and what all of that entails. Cool. Lower time frame here, we are getting a little bit of sell pressure here. I don't know if anything came out. It's not too big. It's about 1.4% down. I was looking at this region low previously as a little deviation play. We do have a strong enough support here. There is a little bit of an order block build up there on the lower time frame there that we're currently paying attention to. It does dip down here, but there does seem to be a lot of sell pressure coming in. Looking at our volume indicator, guys, this is something that I use pretty religiously. And this just basically allows me to identify momentum in the market, right? Volume's not, you know, a sole indicator. It's more of a confluence. But the way I use is very, very simple. I identify growth in volume or momentum in moves, right? So I have a little diagram which I can't share with you guys anymore. But basically, in a nutshell, the most simplistic way I can explain it is if we see the market falling down and volume or sell volume increasing as the market goes down, we know that that move is supported by that volume, right? Which means that the lower the asset is going, the more people are selling out of that asset, right? Which means that that volume is supported. There's enough momentum there to suggest not entering the market or potentially executing a short position or getting out of any long positions, right? You don't want to be in a market like this where we do see volume increasing here on this downturn. As you guys can see, this is aggregated across about 4 or 5 exchanges. Aggregated across Binance, Bybit, and OKX. So your 3 big boys in the crypto space. We're starting to notice a little bit of an increase in that volume right there, right? So that sell pressure is growing. What we've seen over the last couple of weeks in general is a lot more sell pressure on these down moves relative to that buy pressure that's kicking into the market, right? Very, very simply put, when I see something like this, I'm very, very unlikely to execute that trade that I was previously looking for. And now it kind of flips a little bit on its head, right? We still have about 17 minutes till close. Obviously now losing that little order block of support right there, but creating a little fair value gap in inefficiency in the market in general. We do have this previous one here that is currently being filled. So that's this fair value gap indicator there. There is an example on TradingView with a very, very similar. It's not as accurate as mine, but it's close enough. And that's obviously highlighting that fair value gap, that initial one being pushed there. We could get a little squeeze and then close above that zone, which does kind of give us a little bit more opportunity But we are looking at this level here, right? This little double bottom formation that we're seeing on Bitcoin here. I think if we're able to find strength above the zone, there is some trading opportunities there. A little bit of relief up into the $64,000 region at the very least. And then on a more optimistic path back up into $70,000, right? But that's extremely, extremely optimistic. I wouldn't necessarily, I take that with a grain of salt. I don't think that that is likely to happen, but that's kind of how that trade would go. For me, when I'm looking at the market on a higher time frame basis, this is a more higher time frame trade. Not higher time frame, but more of a day trade holding for a week or so. I'm not looking to take the breakdown here, right? The breakdown here from a risk to reward perspective is significantly worse, right? My downturn here, we could look at it from a measured move that this is your consolidation, that's your initial pull. We could potentially see something here, but I don't like where that entry is and I don't like the risk behind that trade. If I'm looking to take any trade on an hourly basis that I do hold for a couple weeks or a couple days, whatever the case may be, then I'm looking for the upside targets here. Right, so as soon as that's invalidated, then the entire medium time frame trade is completely invalidated. Right, I'm not looking to go revenge trade or dive back into the opposite direction to chase the downside. I have one thesis. I'm looking for a little bit of relief in Bitcoin. I'm looking for a retest at the zone here post volatility. And if I get that and I can drive that trade back up towards that 65,000, 64,000, potentially even sweep the highs over here at about 67,000 optimistically, then I'll look to take that trade. But if it's invalidated and we don't find any support and we do see this continued collapse below the region here, you know, we move on. We move on to the next hundreds of charts, hundreds of trading opportunities. We maybe look at addressing it or assessing it from a lower time frame and see what we can do on that front. Yo, what's happening, X-Files? Guys, if you are just joining here, if you've come organically, let me know in the chat, right? If you weren't a subscriber before, I'd appreciate anyone that can subscribe and we can hopefully grow this channel over enough period of time. Very, very small community, very, very small, humble project of mine. Yeah, so anybody, you know, we're kind of like the underdogs right now in this, and there's many underdogs, but we're one of them. So yeah, if you would consider supporting by just following, I don't have any links to show you anything like that, just to subscribe so we can organically reach more people would be much appreciated. And at the same time there, if you guys could drop a couple likes or anything on the chats and then maybe leave a comment at the end, I'd appreciate that very much. Yeah, but something, yeah, this market open's been quite dramatic. I'm assuming the stock market's correcting. Let's have a look and see. No, not much here. A little bit of volatility on market open, but we're not seeing too much over here. No major reason on that front for Bitcoin to correct. I don't know if any news has come out. It is a little bit aggressive, right? A 3% down candle. Let's take a look and see if we can see anything on Twitter. Forgive me if anything bad comes on my Twitter. A lot of Grand Theft Auto stuff lately. Oh, GDP growth up to 2.1% from 1.6%. I'm not going to act like I know what that means. Nothing. My Twitter is so uncrypto right now. Let me know if you guys have seen anything or, you know, if I'm missing any news that just came out. Let's assess from a lower time frame here. Yo, massive, massive sell pressure here. We should see a little bit of relief coming relatively soon, right? We did have a little bit of a gap created here previously, which we previously highlighted. But there is a decent amount of sell pressure here. Obviously, Bitcoin now losing $60,000 would have been actually a fun position to be short on that. This was the really good short position from this point here, but obviously happened before the show. But yeah, let's see what happens. This is obviously where that support would come in, but I'm not going to chase this trade now. I think this volatility, looking at the volume here, you're just going to get caught on the wrong side here. This is clearly supported by volume, so it's clearly something heavy driving the price down. I think we'll likely continue to see this driven down, yeah, at least over the next couple hours, right? We'll see a little bit of relief every now and then. I'm not necessarily going to trade anything off it. If we look at some liquidity swings, yeah, I've been trying to study some new patterns, some new, I've actually been building some automated trading systems as well, which I'll teach you guys how to do a little bit later. Very, very difficult to find something that works, you know, and you just kind of scrape and you get a little bit closer every time you add a little factor to it or readdress something. I use actually zigzag formations for that. That's why the zigzag indicators here, but you can't really trade off it. But one of the indicators I really like right now, when we do get these liquidity sweeps here, I tend to add the volume profile here. And on a solid basis here, if we do get these retests here, I think this is a little bit aggressive. I've been noticing a lot of success in that strategy. Combining a liquidity sweep with a retest of a high volume profile is pretty solid. We've got a few cool indicators over here as well. You'll see them should start to load in just a second. There you go. Got some footprint charts there, right? They show you exactly where that volume building is up on an intra-candle basis. Pretty cool strategy there as well. This is more like order flow trading. You use it with an order book, inefficiencies the market from that direction. You can do market TPOs as well, which is also really, really awesome. You can see these little liquidity gaps in the market is what we're looking at here. A lot of volatility. Just watching it as a pure admirer at this point. But this is quite aggressive. I wish we were positioned for a short position prior. That would have been a good way to open the show. But yeah, basically here's the low right here. I think there's enough momentum here to actually sweep out this region here and create a new low for Bitcoin. We'll see what happens if you're going to get any support. It is from this zone, but from a liquidity standpoint, from a market maker perspective, you want to address this as such. Big support level here. A lot of retail traders will look at executing long positions here. There will also be a lot of liquidity trapped on the underside there through liquidation points, stop losses, what have you. A lot of that invalidation in those long positions sit below that point right there. So if there is a build up, you don't want to take any long positions on that retest of the zone, right? Specifically after such a massive gap in market, right? After such massive momentum behind the move, you don't want to sit here and go, okay, cool, this is the obvious place to take a long position, and then you just dive into it. I think there's an extremely high likelihood that we do squeeze out this zone now, probably bleed into like that 58k zone, and then come back into refill a little bit of that liquidity gap that was created, potentially creating a little bit of a retest system here into 60.4, and then continuation towards the downside, furthermore. But we'll see what happens here. I think there's a lot of sell pressure coming in on Bitcoin right now. Guys, if you are watching the market or you are watching the news, I'll get a good news source in the stream as well. Let me know. Let me know if you guys see anything. Obviously, my Twitter is absolutely screwed right now. But hopefully we can find some information. Let's have a look and see what's happening on the Sol front. Sol also seeing a little bit of that volatility, a little bit more tradable. Look at this. I want to show you guys how the strategy works. You see that? It's a good example. It's a little bit flatline. I'm still refining it. But as I said, when we get these little liquidity sweeps in the market and then retest into the volume profile high, it's a like weirdly good strategy, right? I don't know what it means yet. As I said, really studying these backtesting strategies and going through things. I'm using machine learning, so it's a little bit different than your traditional trading bots and backtesting strategies. But identifying patterns in the market, one of the things that I came across was that combination between liquidity sweeps and retest into high volume profile levels. And as you guys can see, as a textbook example, right? We sweep the level right there, come back into retest, and post that we have a 6% correction there on the hourly basis, right? Fairly common, right? We saw something over here as well. Liquidity sweep above that point there, swing trade, comes back in, retests the high point, and then goes up another 14%, right? Awesome strategy. I wish I could build something for you guys so you could, use it, but we'll have time to do that at a later period where we can build more strategies and kind of execute on that front. But it's a pretty awesome thing. And yeah, I've seen it a few times happen now, and it's been really exciting, right? This would obviously have been a perfect example as well. Let's see if we're early to any Ethereum system here. Ethereum's a close example, right? We had a volume cluster slightly higher, but anyway, looking at this high point here, this POC, another example of that trade strategy, sweep the liquidity, coming back down into this zone here. I'm interested to see how Ethereum handles this lower 1.5K region as well. PCE data came out. Okay, cool. Yeah, I wish I had known. Completely frank with you guys, I haven't been spending a lot of time watching markets and really assessing it as much as I used to. You know, I have the overall thesis. A lot of that money is trapped in those short positions, which I have a lot of conviction in. But I think now getting back into the swing of things is why we'll do a little bit more shows. You know, I still have the skill. I'm just not, you know, I'm not up to date with every single price action factor that's happened in the market, but we'll pick it up in a show or two, whatever the case may be. I mean, this order book is going wild. It's also aggregated across multiple exchanges. But extremely, extremely volatile market. I think Ethereum's easily going to sweep this lower level here. Yeah. I might kind of package these little strategies that I find. These strategies you can replicate yourself, guys. You go onto TradingView indicators. I think they have liquidity swings. I'm sure they do. Okay, look, Lux Algo has liquidity swings. So that's very similar. Actually looks pretty much identical. Very, very similar instance here, right? So you can use that strategy, and then volume profiles are fairly common, right? So volume profiles, you obviously know, are on TradingView, and you can kind of make that combination for yourself and see if you identify the same patterns. It works on a lower time frame as well, which is really, really cool. My bots are really focused on that lower time frame trading. For example, we're seeing a little bit more of a sweep over here. We don't have too strong of a profile anywhere near, so we'll take the entire range. Could retest into 62.5. I think it's a little bit optimistic, but Bitcoin's officially printed out the new low. Not enjoying this PCE data, clearly. Okay. I'm not going to keep the first show too long, guys. I am going to wrap up pretty soon. But what I'm looking at here for Bitcoin right now, obviously there's a big inefficiency in this market. How you want to address these strategies, very, very simply put. Oh, you know, we're not on the lower time frame. Very simply put, when we see something like this, a massive inefficiency candle that does break that structure, it does create a huge gap in the order books. Right, it is what's known as a liquidity gap and inefficiency candle. There is opportunity in the inverse of that trade, right, to start to try catch a little bit of that retracement to fill out some of that liquidity. I think that this sweep is pretty heavier. You can see the liquidity swing now taking place. We're obviously going to close in the next 4 minutes below this point. It does look pretty aggressive relative to, I mean, a pretty aggressive pullback, about 5% in one candle now. Yeah, pretty aggressive. Good timing for the show. But yeah, we'll obviously start to see if we can get a little bit of retracement into these zones here, start to address the 60.5, the 59K zone a little bit later. And that could be that entry for that next drive down in the market. For now, obviously, after such a volatile move, after such a massive gap in liquidity, you don't want to start looking to chase that short position now. That's at least not my strategy. I'll try to let the market settle down, process the data and see how we develop from that point. We could swing and then come back and reclaim that zone, and that kind of revalidates that little long position here on a higher time frame, still holding intact the double bottom formation where we could look to drive Bitcoin's price still back up to 70K. But for now, we play everything by ear. There's a lot of volatility entering on the lower time frame. This is the environment that you generally tend to get wrecked if you are trading or trying to chase out that position. Guys, always very important. I'll end the show with some important closing wisdom. Trading is extremely easy, right? I know that sounds like a crazy thing to say, but learning how to trade, understanding charts is an extremely, extremely easy skill. Anybody can do that. Anybody can do an analysis. The entire skill or the entire success from trading, I don't care what anyone says, at least 75 to 80% of that success is the emotional control and the patience. Right? Anybody can find a winning strategy, but it takes an elite amount of control of your own emotions to really control that execution, to understand when to look away, when to walk away. This would be a very, very good example. Now, I have coupled a community behind it, which I'd be a little bit more hesitant to chase any trade in general. But how we look at this now is I see a lot of volatility in the market. I know it goes against my system. Now I can still try chase the trade to chase that money, but that's where that emotional control comes in, and that's how you become a more successful trader, right? Is that patience in the market and assessing this. Okay, cool, market open happened now. I didn't catch the short, unfortunately, obviously shit talking about the markets. So I'm not going to try chase this position out here. I'm going to kind of understand when to look away and when to reassess the situation, right? That is the number one thing that's going to change you from a non-profitable trader to a more profitable trader, right? It's that emotional control and really knowing when to step away. Guys, thank you so much for joining the first show. A little bit messy. The structure will change. It will start to improve. We will do a lot more live trading, really focusing on that and honing into that skill. Having a lot of fun with that, driving the $100 account up as much as we can, or protecting it as much as we can. But I really do hope you guys enjoyed the show. Subscribe. Something I've never ever said before in my entire life, but I appreciate you guys so much for being here. Much love to you guys. Stay safe, trade safe, and I'll catch you guys all in the next one. Much love, guys.